when we talk about like, oh, what are you gonna do when you grow up? You're never like, you're always like, you could be like anything you want.
Yeah.
Basically, you told us chase after what you love to do the most.
What do you think makes a good mother?
I think a good parent is willing to grow and change.
When I grew up, my dad was never there, and he never came to my ball games. He never came to my little league games and that. And then with my sons, I always wanted to be a part of that.
As a family, our individualism, you know, as mum and as dad, because we can get lost in that role and then forget about who we are as well.
My dad would make the trips out here to the States illegally at first. He always had a dream and aspired to do something more than just that.
I've asked my children to be here today. So, welcome to the show, Max Mylett and Bella Mylett. Great to have you.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
So, it's great to have you. I love you guys.
Love you.
So, people ask all the time what it's like to be in our family. I'm curious for you guys, what is it like to grow up in our family, or, you know, maybe a family that's had a little bit of financial success or whatever? What was that like growing up, Maximus?
Well, I would say it's a little bit different than what everybody would think it is, because for us growing up initially, we didn't really know kind of what the difference was versus other people. Like, kind of the whole spectrum from high school and college. It took a bit to figure out like how different the impact you were making and the wealth that you were accumulating basically over time.
You think it was like hard to tell because we're just like any other family, right? I mean, there's no real inside our family. We don't look at ourselves as any different than anybody else.
Yeah, no, we're just completely normal people.
Right.
Like we don't see us different versus any other family, basically anywhere at school or anything like that.
What about you, Boo?
I mean, same thing. In the beginning, I like had no idea the difference between like if our family was any different than anyone else's. But I mean, it was definitely lucky to grow up like this and go on like nice trips, go to Cabo, stuff like that.
Yeah. So,
but I mean, it always felt very normal. Like it didn't feel like anything like, oh, we're super different than anyone else. It was like it was just similar.
It still feels that way, doesn't it? I mean, I don't feel like, I mean, just the fact that we've been able to live in some nice places or do some cool stuff. I mean, we just, you know, we're not any different in that sense. But I do think, you know, like, for example, you, Bella, maybe, well, Max, too. Both of you guys, even growing up, weren't you a little like, you didn't want to bring people over. You didn't want them to know that maybe we had a nice house or whatever.
Yeah.
Why for each of you was that? You didn't want people to like you for that reason? Or like, why? Because there was a long time, both of you were like, you know what, I mean, my friends at the beach, but not at our house. You go like to another beach.
Yeah.
Why, Boo?
I think I don't know. I think it was kind of like I didn't want people to know that my family had money, so they would look at me differently, kind of. And like almost in the way of like other kids, if you had money, would kind of look at you and be like, oh, like she must be like a stuck up type of person or something like that. And I kind of wanted my friends to just like me and not be like, oh, she lives in like Laguna Beach, like we should go to her house. Like I was like, didn't want that to happen.
What about you?
I would say it's kind of the same thing. When you grow up kind of like how we did, sometimes people can make like judgments about you right before actually getting to know you. So if they kind of know like who you were, like I've had people that come up to me, and then I've had friends that have not known you at all and that eventually found out. And the way they treat you and like how they talk to me is completely different.
How's it different?
Well, some people will be like, oh, your dad's Ed Mylett. Can you sign my book? Can I ask him a couple questions? I even had someone ask if they wanted to like stay a couple days just so they could talk to you. Versus I have some friends that just grew up like they're just normal people. And I was just talk to them and then they found out. They built relationships with you kind of like a normal way. I think that's been good for them too, but like they weren't friends with me just like for money or to get to know you. They were actually just genuine friends.
Yeah. Do you, because I don't know, I mean, I feel like you guys, even to this day, like we function very normally. Like neither one of you have spent lots of money. Neither one of you have like really great cars. Bella,
Hey, I bought her. She's a good car.
She bought her car, but it's not a car you'd think some little rich little girl has, right? She's not driving around in a Mercedes or a BMW or anything like that. She paid for it.
She's cute. She's
cute. And even in your case, you drive my old truck.
Yeah, it's your truck.
You drive an old truck that I had. So I don't, you know, we've done a pretty good job of that stuff. Do either you feel any like pressure coming from a you know, I don't know, like a family that's, you know, made some impact or anything like that? Is there any pressure that comes along with that, or you just discard that altogether?
I mean, maybe a little bit of pressure, just being like, oh, wow, like, I want to end up successful as well. But I think it's more of, like, motivating, being able to actually, like, see someone in your life that's, like, one of the most important people do so well and do so much. it's like, wow, like I want to do a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just like seeing someone from afar and like having an idol, it's like you're with this person every day.
Mm-hmm.
You live with them. It's like super motivating.
And you know how screwed up I am and weird I am.
Yeah, well, no, and that
Obviously.
too. It's like we see the side of you that's not like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, he's like killing it and going on trips. Like we see him like waking up at like 6 a.m. sitting on the couch, like drinking coffee with like singing to the dogs. Like,
Yeah,
stuff
no,
like
I think
that.
that's really important for people to know. Like, there's not some robot there. Like, I have good mornings and bad mornings. I'm in a good mood and a bad mood. Some days I'm motivated, inspiring. Sometimes I'm kind of a jerk, right? Like, there's this. We're
like,
humans.
well, it's like some mornings. It's like anytime I leave the house, like you're yelling at me, like make today a great day. Like me and my friends are waking up from a sleepover, and you're like yelling like today's gonna be great. And then, but there's also days where it's like you're just drained and tired and being yourself.
By the way, when she says yelling, she means yelling motivational things. Like,
yeah,
you're
not
a,
like
you're a
screaming
superstar.
yeah, no, like you got this. Like, go kill it. And I'm like, it's 7 a.m. But
You
like,
used to roll your eyes a lot when I did that. Do you think it was good? Like if you were talking to parents listening to this, do you think that was a good thing to send you? Like, hey, you're a superstar. Was that actually, even though you're rolling your eyes, is that a good thing?
Like even though I'd like play it off and be like, oh my god, like shut up, dad.
Right.
It was like that's nice to hear in the morning. Like I don't know, some like it's nice to grow up and have like affirmation when some kids don't grow up getting that from their parents.
Yeah. I say you're a leader.
Yeah.
Lead,
So you
don't
say to
follow.
me,
Hugs, not drugs.
Rachel and I brought that up the other day. How every morning you were like, hugs, not drugs. Like you got it.
What were you gonna say, Max?
I was gonna say, I remember growing up, you still do it a lot, but especially when I like stayed at home, wasn't in college, every night, you'd be like, hey, you're a leader, you're a champion, you're the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
And that kind of just built like a mindset in where it's like, I can do all these things. Like I can be a leader. I can be great. I can do all of these things and actually have some self-confidence.
Yeah. Do you feel pressure being the son of someone who's, this is really weird tone. I don't mean for people to think that, I hope everyone understands this in the tone. We're just a normal family. Like we don't ever talk like this. Never, ever, never. What's it like to come from our family?
Oh, we've never talked about that.
Literally never. I
The
mean,
first
you're going off to college, Bella, Max. You're going to be a junior at college. We've never talked like this before.
No.
I hope that's important for everybody to know.
Super weird.
It's super weird for us because for us, we're just a family, and for us, it's just like very normal every single day, and we don't look at ourselves, nor are we any different than any other family. But we're a public family now, and obviously, there's a responsibility that comes with that. But for you, being the son of someone who's made a little bit of a difference in the world or having some financial success, I've heard from your mom and from other people that sometimes you go, hey, I feel a little bit of pressure not to end up average and ordinary or anything like that.
Oh yeah, I think that's very true. And I can't speak for you, but for me, I feel like you've set a bar and a standard for me, and I think for Bella and everybody in our family, like our cousins, our aunts, uncles, everything. You set a bar that I feel like we have to meet, expectations that we have to meet. Obviously, you grow up, and we're fortunate enough to even be in a podcast like this. I feel like there's certain things, certain standards that we have to hold to that most people don't have.
Well, maybe you'll take the show over someday too, as I get a little bit older. Have I made it clear to the two of you that I don't think what you do for a living has to necessarily bring money?
For sure.
100%.
For sure.
Yeah.
How have I done that?
I mean, you tell us like when we talk about like, oh, what are you gonna do when you grow up? You're never like, you're always like, you could be like anything you want. You could be a vet. You could be like a nurse. You could be like living on an island, renting canoes to people. Like you could do anything.
Yeah. Basically, you told us chase after what you love to do the most, because sometimes money can just come with that. Sometimes it doesn't, but if you love it enough, it's okay.
Gabby Reece, thank you for joining us on Max Out today.
Thank you for having me. I love the name Max Out.
We have some mutual friends, and so obviously I knew you from your athletic career, your modeling career. I knew the public you. And the thing that surprised me about you, surprised in a pleasant way, was this sense of normalcy that you seem to have in your life, and how dedicated, frankly, of a mother you are first, and wife, but seems so dedicated in that part of your life. Do you think that's because there was a lack of stability and structure when you were young?
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. I think you're overcompensating for my lack of, and I really don't want to blow it as a mother. And there's sort of like a great amount of insecurity around like trying to do it the right way. Because I always say, if you had a mom or parents that showed you love and discipline, you would then know that you know how to administer that comfortably. And I think for me, believe it or not, because in some ways I think I can be kind of a hard ass, but when it comes to my kids, I'm always, hedging like, oh, okay, if I'm too intense or if I'm too tough on them, will they not know that I love them? Where I see people who've had a really beautiful example of those two coming together, and they have no problem being like to their kids, like, hey, suck it. But I love you. Like they don't put their head on the pillow going like, so I think there was that. And I think quite frankly with Laird, I'm certainly dedicated to him and to our family.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest, what's interesting about having a partner like Laird is that's kind of the unspoken rule, if you will. And so there's an interesting thing where people will be like, oh, you're a very dedicated wife. And it's like, oh, yeah, I am. But also I'll be forthcoming and say I have a partner that shows up in a real way. And so the silence, invitation / expectation would be in your way, your language. Hopefully you're on the same page.
Yeah.
And so what that does is you prime that pump, right? And you're constantly flexing like, hey, no one's telling me anything. That wouldn't work. But I'm going to really show up because I see this person and they're showing up.
Yeah.
And then that just becomes the gear.
Yeah. He didn't set it, but there's a standard that is just sort of set by his conduct. Now, I'm curious, what do you think makes a good mother? Because I said you're a good mother. What do you think makes one?
That's like a moving target, that question. I think, here's what I know. I think if you can be here for your children and you can love them, and then what I've had to learn is to listen, really listen, not listen and fix, just genuinely listen to that person. And also realize that these people are here on this planet separate from you with their own journey. And that might make me wildly uncomfortable as a mother, because part of it's like, I wouldn't choose that for you, whether it's that personality trait that you're either permanently in or temporarily in, or that conduct, or there's certain moves. We have 3 daughters, one's an adult, one is 16 and one's 12. So, we've had some opportunities to get into deep parenting. So I think it's that. And beyond that, I think a good parent is willing to grow and change. And I don't know when my kids were little, that was a concept I was familiar with. But then when they became teenagers, it's like you're reminded they're here, give you this next opportunity, if you take it, as uncomfortable as it is, to continue to grow. And I feel like then you can bring that growth into this next part of your life.
I totally agree with you. It's funny that you say that. I just made a post about it the other day, just because I think I said something along the lines like changing your mind is actually a strength. It's not a weakness. Yeah. And changing the way you parent is a strength, not a weakness. And it's funny. I think sometimes people think that it's, somehow this strength, I'm rigid in what I believe. I'm rigid in my expectations. I think being a parent's more like an art form than it is necessarily a science, right? It's kind of both. I think being married is too, don't you?
Yeah. And I think you're pivoting and adapting. And I think it's like, what season is it? What time is it? What's going on in that person's life? What's going on in your life? And I think when we do that rigid setup, because I could have that inclination, I use that hyper discipline, that hyper grind, thing to it's gotten me so far. And then you realize, oh, but if I'm really going to be a powerful or have a chance at any glimmer of wisdom, I have to be pliable. I have to be able to take constructive criticism. And I also have to let everybody kind of really be who they are. And that has been very difficult. And then there's something really liberating, because we can't control it anyway. And so I feel like once we stop, then somehow there's a freedom in acceptance of like, wow, even this sucks a little, or I'm uncomfortable. Why is she doing that? And it's okay.
Okay. I'm so glad you just said that. Okay. I'm going to tell you something. Rarely when I'm like researching to do the show, and by the way, I do all the research myself. I was researching things about you and things you said, and it's public information that you and Laird at one time almost were divorced, right? And I was watching a recent interview with you, and you had said to her, it was Danica Patrick, you had said to her, I don't know. You said, I think we will, but I don't know if Laird and I will be married in 10 years. And let me tell you what was interesting. When I first heard that, I went, oh, wow, that's terrible. And then I'll be honest with you. I thought about it and I thought, what a really insightful thing to say. Because I think when you're looking to keep everything in order the way it's always going to be, to some extent, you lose your presence in the moment. And it gives you much less flexibility in your life to really grow and change yourself. In other words, if everything's predictable, or the nature of your relationship, the nature of your life, and as humans, we all want to kind of gravitate towards certainty. It's always going to be this way. It's always going to be like that. I know you want to be. I know you probably will be. But I want you to know it was one of those really rare moments. I thought about it last night. I woke up last night knowing we were going to do this today, and I reflected on it again, and I thought, wow, there's some, I don't know if it's bizarre, it's some beautiful power in that way of thinking almost. Do you know what I mean? Like it's, I guess for me, it allows you to be more present when you're not trying to take control of the future all the time. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. Again, because of my childhood and by my nature, I really want to set up rigid. I do. And what's interesting is I chose a partner who is really quite different, like so disciplined, but I'm talking about like, this is a person who follows weather. So they actually want to have the feeling of the flexibility of and now we've got apps that tell us weather. So we have senses of things coming a week in advance. But let's say when Laird was younger, it was like, what will the day bring me? Will I be able to adjust and adapt to that so I can maximize that day, right? And so I've chosen a partner who needs that sense of feeling of like, I am free, even though, listen, I have Laird's schedule. His book is right in front of me. And at times I'm like, tomorrow you have this and that. But it's wanting that sense of freedom. And this is what I say about the marriage. I'm going to wake up every day and I will do my best and work for it that day. And beyond that, I don't know what else to do. It's kind of like I have friends who I saw them, maybe the marriages didn't work out. And then it was like the train left the station. And then they're like, wait a second, let's talk about it. And what I do realize is the time to get on the train is like when you're in it. And it's the same with training. Just because I literally trained for 30 years, literally 33 years of my life, I still have to get up tomorrow and try to make good nutritional choices and train, because it's sort of an ongoing.
So I want to welcome the Gronkoski boys to the Max Out program. Welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Hey.
First off, I'm the only one who hasn't graduated from college yet. So thank you for the compliment that, we're all masterminds and we all, we're very well schooled. But my brother Glenn, he graduated with 2 degrees at Kansas State. So he let me borrow one of his degrees. So I got one now too. So thank you.
And for those of you that are not on YouTube, that was Rob, the college non-graduate of the family here. And what we're going to do today, you guys, is just so the audience knows, this is going to go all over the place because I'm interviewing basically 6 people at once. So we're going to interrupt each other, and it'll probably be a little bit of a show, which is okay because you're going to learn a lot. Any of you, why should you be listening today? You should be listening today because you want to become a better entrepreneur, or you want to get more fit, or you want to raise better children, or you want to know a little bit about how to develop and lead successful people. And Gordy, the leader of the family, the more I've read, the more he and I have talked, the more impressed I am. I want to read a quote to you, Gordy, but I want to start with you because you're the center of all this stuff that's happened with your sons. And this is from Growing Up Gronk, but I thought this was interesting. It said, growing up Gronk has always meant being pushed and pushing back, fighting and scrapping, showing off to gain bragging rights without letting their egos become inflated. It seems to me like a centerpiece of this family has been mental toughness and competition. Has at least been part of it, right? How did you do that with these?
That's been a big part of it.
Sons of yours? Talk about that a little bit, Gordy.
Yeah, it was a big part of it. And as I grew older, I didn't have to really get involved anymore because they just got each other going constantly, and they were just promoting each other constantly, and they're just getting each other going. And it was like when I got them in the basement for the first time, my oldest son, he didn't want nothing to do with the basement. And then I got the second guy down there, and I started him in 8th grade in weightlifting. I said, hey, because I knew they had more talent than the other kids because I coached them all. And then once I got them in there in the basement, Danny, the next thing, it was just like a virus, going through the family. And I didn't have to really go down there and really push them that much because they pushed themselves. It was a great thing for a dad to see. It was a phenomenal thing to see how they pushed each other.
Was it ever a negative thing, all the competition?
No, I thought it was great, and my rule in the house was no punch in the face and no punch in the midsection. And they used to go at it all the time. It was a good brawl every single day, and it was competition. What I did in the basement too, I set up trophy racks, and each one had their own trophy case. And it was like competition, who got the trophies downstairs. And they all bragged about it when they did something. They were proud of themselves, but they stayed humble about it too, because I said, hey, let Dad do the bragging. You guys just stay humble and do your thing, and and just keep working at it.
Were you? I'm curious. Like all the humor that I see now, was that part of the equation too? Like, was it always light and funny, and you all taking shots at each other? Was that part something you did really serious? Because Gordy, I was reading about you. I'm going to ask you this. I feel kind of a kinship with you. My dad was an alcoholic, and but involved. My dad's now my best friend. Been sober 30 plus years, but I know what it's like to grow up where not everything's okay with Dad. My sense is that had to have an impact on you. If I'm wrong, correct me, but not having the perfect dad relationship at the time, did that make you, when you decided, hey, I'm going to be a dad, to be more involved, more engaged with the boys? I know I'm going deep early, but I'm curious if that had anything to do with it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when I grew up, my dad was never there. And he never came to my ball games. He never came to my little league games and that. And then with my sons, I always wanted to be a part of that. And I was always there for my kids, and I coached them and I did all that. But on the other hand, I grew up from middle or lower class family. I mean, we had our electric turned off and that, and it was just me and my brother. And my dad, he was a very physical person too. He liked to hit. And I just never wanted to be like him, and I brought my kids up. I didn't want to bring my kids up like that. And I think it was it made me tough. It made me and my brother really tough, just because we went through that. And it's really good that we went through it. I mean, I still love my dad and that. I'm sure you love your dad, but it's just a different love.
Yeah.
And it's like I said, with my kids, I didn't want that for them at all. And I realized that. And I wanted to be there for my kids, because everything I hated, because you wanted your dad there so you could say, hey, Dad, you're proud of me, and have those nice comments come from your dad and all that stuff. But I never had that. So I had to feed myself. And that's basically, I was a punk kid because there was no direction there. And I had to go through it and learn it myself.
Yeah, and he was also a good athlete, everybody listening to, kind of didn't get the encouragement from Dad. Not all of his coaches supported him like he should. I did a podcast. I was a guest on one, Gordy, on a dad podcast. And the dude hosting it actually said a lot better stuff than I did. But he said the one thing, he asked me at the end, he goes, what do you want your boys to be able to say about you or your children someday? And I said, you know what? I hope my kids say that I was a really good man and that I loved them. Those are the two things I'd hope my kids would take away, the first things they'd say about me. And he goes, you know what I wanted my kids to say was that I was always there. And I thought that's a big part of being a dad, is like just being present. All you guys, as loose as we're going to get today, it's a blessing to have. I know you all know this, but to have a dad like Gordy that was just there, not only there, but pushed you, loved you, cared about you. It's a big deal. And I want to ask you all of these guys, everyone, are successful in their own right. All of the sons. And so I want to talk to Gordy first, and AKA G Money. And Gordy, first off, those of you that aren't watching this, you have to have an appreciation too. My understanding, I mean, he's 6'6". He's a big kid, man. This is a big man, right? And one thing all of them also have that I like, that I've seen, these really big, strong men are pretty kind dudes. You know what I mean? Like, they're pretty kind dudes, and people like them. But Gordy, in your case, I think you played baseball. If I'm wrong, fix that, okay? But
no, you're right. 6 years professional baseball. I went to college for baseball.
The success with that. How did whatever you learned in sports, Gordy, how did that transfer? Because I'm a big fan. 5 Pro cookies, guys. I'm not trying to promote either. Just so you know, true story. You can ask Chris this later. I ordered this stuff before I knew these guys. I did. And then Chris and I were talking. He's like, hey, I'm going to send you some free cookies. I go, you don't need to do it, man. I got a box of these already. Now, it turns out he did send me some. But what are the lessons from Dad from sports that you're using now to build your entrepreneur businesses? What's some of the things?
The biggest thing I would say, well, first of all, when we were coming out of college or when I was coming out of high school, my brother Dan really helped push me. And I know we were just talking about that before. I wasn't a kid who was really in the weight room. I could say honestly, without my brothers, I wouldn't have got to where I was on the sports field as well as playing on the professional field at that type of level. Because without that camaraderie, he was always pushing to be better, and he was ahead of me in varsity sports. And I look back and I was like, you can go one of two ways here, and it made me a better person. It got me stronger. And then with the help of my parents, they were like, hey, you can't be in Buffalo, New York if you want to get to the next level. And you can't play baseball in the snow. So if you want help here, we'll help you out. But, you got to be willing to put in the effort. My pops taught me how to call colleges. He said, you're going to do it. It's not going to be me. I'll show you how to do it. And it made me a better person for that, because I was scared, but it made me stronger. And then we got on the road and went and visit colleges. And I only had one scholarship, well, not even a scholarship. I had one scholarship offer and then a walk-on offer in Florida. So, the biggest thing, the camaraderie with my brothers, when I was younger, and then the teamwork that I learned throughout the whole process. I think that's the biggest thing in business right now, is you have to put good people around you. I know where I'm strong at, but I also know where I'm very weak at. And I like to put people in those seats to help make me a better person and to give them better opportunities as well. And I could say, honestly, without my brothers as a team, we're just not in the same spot. I think we all could say the same thing. We're not where we are today without the teamwork on the baseball or on the football field and off the field with business.
Joe Frost, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Ed.
We just found out we're doing this through Zoom, and we basically are literally a 10-minute drive from each other. So we should have been, but I'm grateful we're doing it nonetheless. So you know what? There's so many directions I want to go with you. And as a father too, there's questions. I wish I had mine are 19 and 17. I wish we would have had this conversation a little earlier. But before we do it, what are some of the issues now you see affecting families that maybe are different than they were, say, 10 years ago? Like current issues that you see, wow, this is new stuff. Is it technology? What would you say it is that's different?
Well, the technology era did shift us into a space that left us really wondering how we were going to navigate this new novel space, and at the same time respect the boundaries enough to honor the sacredness of family, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that one of the biggest distractions is technology, right? Because it does cut into our life on so many levels. We spend so many hours. It has created addiction with children even as young as the age of 5 years old. I think that we right now are in a space where, especially in the last 18 months, there's a lot of fatigue, a lot of burnout, a lot of questioning. I think families are questioning a lot about where they work, where they live, what's truly important to them as a family, what they thought was important, and now realize when we've been in such a space in the last 18 months of really recognizing, wow, like what are we truly grateful for? That there's been a big flip. There's been a lot of conversations that have had to have had, and I feel like when, for example, came along, it really did two things. It highlighted issues for families that needed to get a grip of new things that were happening, working from home and children learning from home and learning all to be in the same space if you had like 5 or 6 of you, so respecting boundaries. But what it also did was highlight the issues that have been sitting there for a very long time, and we chose to ignore it. We went on vacation and thought it would be fine. We gave an excuse that we were both working till late. We said, oh, the kids, that's just kids, that's how they are. And really it highlighted with a big fat Sharpie pen, deal with this, you can't run. We're all in lockdown, and now's the time to address what the problem is, because I truly believe that 2021 is about transition. So even the things that we thought may be a problem for us before the pandemic has kind of leveled us all out into recognizing, what are we truly grateful for? How are we going to move forward in 2021 to bring us more peace, more harmony, more connection as a family in 2022? Still honoring as a family our individualism, you know, as mum and as dad, because we can get lost in that role and then forget about who we are as well. So a lot of the work that I do is not just helping families to transform when they come to me and say, we've got parental issues, but also to life coach in a way and being able to look at the married couple and to see how they can connect with one another and have their own journey, but support one another as a couple, as a married couple, because when they can do that, they show up better as parents for their children, you know?
So good. You know, it made me think. It just dawned on me, now that my son's off at college.
Yeah.
He just came back. He's back for the summer. And it just dawned on me when he walked in, I went, oh, he's back in our home. And then, it sounds really silly, but I went, this whole time I've been creating a home. And you would think, well, duh, that's what you're doing. But no, I just kind of was a dad. My wife's an amazing mother. But like, I wasn't conscious of building a home. We've got a great family. But that thought just dawned on me after he left and he came back, like, this is our home.
Yeah.
This is our home.
The place where children feel safe, the environment is loving and nurturing and accepting, because I believe when you can create that environment the best that you can, I really do feel it gives our children the courage to take risks, to step outside and to take risks and to do things, because they know that there's home. They know that they have parents that love, that support, that are there for them. I mean, that's, you know, that in itself, to be able to do that, just for families to be more consciously aware of the environment that they're creating for their children that we call home. Not a house. A house is not a home unless it has, you know, a parent who can create this loving environment that's fun and also just safe. Like, children want safety. You know, they want to feel safe in the home that they're in from the outside world. It's where we get to kick back and just be, you know, as a family. But it does, I think, give our children the ammunition to take risk, to go outside in the world, because there is this nest, you know, and we see it a lot now. We see it now because of the pandemic. We've had kids that have gone out and, you know, young adults that have been flat sharing and, you know, on their own, and times have hit hard and they've come back home for a bit and they'll settle themselves and then they'll be off again. But that security means the world, I think, to any child, in knowing that they have that. And I say that with knowing that this is something that we build, right? This is something that we build, just like when we watch birds in the garden and they're building nests. You see that it's not built in one day. You know, we build that. It's an experience that's infinite, goes on. You know, there's not an end game, is there? You know, our children are 30 and they're still they'll always be your, you know, your baby girl, you know what I mean? Your son, you know, that in itself.
Mikey, thanks for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation. I'm happy to be here. Pleasure to meet you, and I'm looking forward to, you know, having this relationship going on.
Me too.
I'm very happy.
Me too, man. Your family, to me, is what America's all about, and needs to be more about. And this version of an immigrant family needs to be featured more often. And so when we talk about this part of it, I don't care what side of this debate you're on or any of that other stuff. I just want you to hear this story because I think it will inspire you. Your mom and dad are like the real heroes of your family. Yeah. And I respect you a whole bunch, but the more I read about your father and your mom, I actually even get emotional about the sacrifices I think
just reading about them
Yes.
that they made for you. So tell me a little bit about your dad first, Eduardo, and tell everybody about what he did to come to this country, the work he put in, the back-breaking work he did, even to give an opportunity for someone like you to be a champion.
I enjoy and I love sharing my father's story, my mom's story, because just like you mentioned, I think it can inspire anybody who listens to it, who hears it. It might motivate someone to, you know, do better and do great in life. I consider my mom, my dad, you know, the American dream, you know, in reality and in life, you know.
Yeah.
My father had a 3rd grade education in Mexico. My mom had a 6th grade education in Mexico. Married very young, started having a family in Mexico. We're from the state of Michoacan. They moved around different towns trying to make a living. My dad would make the trips out here to the States illegally at first. Had different lines of work. He worked close by out here in San Pedro at a fish cannery marketplace. He worked the fields also, all North California, Southern California. He had different types of work, but he always had a dream and aspired to do something more than just that. He had a family to raise. He wanted a better life for the family than what Mexico could offer. He came out here legally now when the Bracero program, the last year of the Bracero program was available. He made the trip out here. He turned 18 here in Rancho Cucamonga as he was working. He was working tomato fields. He was working just different you know, type of work, and that was when I think it was Reagan who had the the amnesty, and then because he was here and he was able to get my rest of my older brothers and sisters, you know, their papers to come to the States legally. So he landed here, and they're living in Long Beach, Wilmington. Like I said, he was working the fish cannery business there, and he always loved boxing. He had always loved boxing. He never had the opportunity to box himself because he was married young, had to raise a family. The support wasn't there. Financially, they couldn't afford it. But once he was here, he would go to the boxing gyms and take my older brother Danny with him, and you know, just watch the gym, watch the fighters. He started training my brother and just get him in the sport, just to do something. But it was still, you know, they're very poor still. They're barely making, you know, making by, living in 1-bedroom apartments, that kind of stuff. Fish cannery business goes out of business, shuts down. They relocate to Oxnard. My older brothers are boxing a little bit. He goes and starts working strawberry fields. You know, they're out in the day in the sun from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. 12 hours a day.
It's back-breaking work.
Back-breaking work. My brother Robert started fighting, and my dad would take him early in the mornings to run at the beach or at the mountains before having to head out to work. Then after work, he would send my mom home so she could go and be, you know, home with the family and the kids while he went to open up the gym. He would have to open up a boxing gym. He had that dream. He wanted, you know, boxing. So he opened the gym, started working. It was a city-run gym. He had a few fighters, started running the amateur program. My brother was there. Kid comes by, name of Fernando Vargas. First day at the gym, gets in the ring, doesn't know anything. My brother, my dad, they start training, start working. You know, he just wanted boxing. He loved boxing so much. And he did this for nearly 20 years.
Unbelievable. Of
doing the field work, picking strawberries. My mom was picking strawberries along with my dad.
Are you guys hearing this? Because are you hearing this? So this man comes here, has all these different setbacks. If you've ever driven by a strawberry field, it is back-breaking work. I remember as a kid, I don't know why this makes me so emotional. I remember driving with my dad to a baseball tournament, and I was telling my dad how hard he worked, and I wanted to work like him someday. No joke. We drive right by the strawberry fields, and my dad pointed out there, and he goes, "That's hard work. That's hard work. 100 degrees in the summertime." And his mother's out there with his father doing this.
Listen to this.
Okay.
My mom was pregnant of me, still working the strawberry fields. until she was 6 months pregnant.
Oh my gosh, man. It's just
she was 6 months pregnant of me while she was still working.
Oh my God. How bad do you want your dream to happen? His dad would do this all day. His mother would do this all day. Then he'd go open the gym. And what your dad did that happens in all businesses, then the one dude walks in, and it's Vargas.
Yeah, Vargas.
Someone walks in that's special, right? You don't know it at the time.
They don't know it.
But they're special, and that's when things click. It's almost like when this preparation meets this moment, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, something's going to happen now. And then this starts to lead. So continue.
It's a crazy story. Vargas walks in the gym. 2 other kids walk in the gym around the same week. My dad was there with 2 other coaches, and my dad would kind of try to work with the other coaches, but there was always like that competition: who's a better trainer, who does better. So my dad brought up a challenge to the other coaches and asked them, look, these 3 kids just walked in recently. You know, you guys all seen them in the ring. Neither of them shows anything, experience yet. So why don't you guys pick a fighter? We'll train that kid for 1 month, and at the end of the month, we'll put them to spar and see who's progressing more. So seeing them had already sparred, everybody picked the other 2 and left my dad with Vargas.
For Fernando.
Fernando. They didn't pick Fernando.
He wasn't the guy you'd pick.
They didn't pick him. So my dad says, okay, I'll take whoever you guys leave me.
Wow.
So they left Fernando. My dad trained him. Sure enough, within a month, Fernando's starting to,
That's
move
crazy.
along.
Because I've made a little bit in my own life like you have, I get emotional about because I picture your dad. I know what it's like to get up in the morning and how sore his body must have just been. Just physically sore.
Yeah.
And then to get up and your mother 6 months pregnant with you, right?
Yeah.
They go, and he's in there. I could just picture this man just for his family, just doing the work he needs to do to feed them. And he's got this dream in the back of his mind. There's no one giving your dad motivational pep talks.
No.
There's no Instagram.
Nope.
There's no Think and Grow Rich.
None.
There's just a dude with a fucking dream that he wants to make something happen. And he just worked, right? He just worked. And then to think he leaves there, sends your mom home. And I can just picture him with the keys, open the door. It's quiet in there. There's no one there. There's no reason to think any of this is going to work.
No.
And then, so Vargas ends up, I guess, beating these other 2 kids and becomes...
starts to progress and starts winning fights and tournaments, and along with my brother, and the gym started to really grow, and Fernando ended up making the Olympic team, representing the U.S. in '96. My dad also had another fighter, Carlos Martinez, representing Mexico, same year. It started to really show potential, started to show signs that there's something here, we could do something. But prior to that,
nothing.
It was nothing. I mean, we grew up, I was born still in the 1-bedroom trailer, a mobile park trailer, with all my brothers and sisters in a 1-bedroom trailer.
Is that right?
No one else there, like you said, to tell my dad something's gonna come by, or it's gonna go well for you, this is gonna work, or you need this. Nothing. It was just his dedication, his just strive, his hunger. That's what got him.